The wind outside was sharp and cold, howling across the empty fields like a wild beast hunting for prey. The small wooden house stood alone at the edge of the settlement, its windows glowing faintly with the light of a dying fire. Inside, a human man sat quietly at the table, mending an old coat with slow, careful hands. His daughter, a little girl with bright, curious eyes, played with her rag doll near the fire. The room was warm, filled with the faint smell of bread baking on the hearth, but outside the night was merciless. The man whose name was Elias had lived a quiet life ever since his wife died years ago. His world had shrunk to two things: his work on the farm and the little girl who was his only family. He guarded her with everything he had, for she was his reason to keep moving, his light in the darkness. Nothing else mattered, and no one was welcome to disturb the fragile peace they had built. Then it came, a sound so soft that at first he thought it was only the wind, but then it came again. A faint knock at the door. Elias raised his head, his needle pausing in the fabric. His daughter looked up too, her small hand still clutching the doll. The knock was weak, uncertain, like someone who had no strength left. For a long moment, Elias did not move. He knew the dangers of opening his door after dark. Bandits roamed the outer lands. Hungry travelers sometimes turned violent, and worst of all, sometimes strangers were not human at all. The little girl tilted her head and whispered, "Papa, someone is there." Elias set down his coat and rose slowly. He moved to the door, his hand brushing against the iron tool he kept near the frame. He did not open it at once. He pressed his ear against the wood, listening. The silence stretched. Then came a voice, faint and trembling. "Please, food. Just a little." It was a woman's voice, strange yet soft. Elias frowned. He opened. The door cracked just enough for the firelight to fall on the figure outside. What he saw made him stiffen. A woman stood there, or what was left of one. Her clothes were torn, little more than rags hanging off her thin frame. Her skin carried a pale shade that was not human. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, large and sorrowful. She was not from his world. She was an alien widow, one of those, left behind after the wars had ended. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak again. "I have nothing. I only beg for a piece of bread." Her knees buckled and she leaned against the doorframe as if she might fall at any moment. Elias gripped the edge of the door. His heart pounded. He remembered the stories, how alien stragglers tricked humans, how they brought trouble, how they were cursed by their own people and abandoned to wander. Bringing one into his home could ruin everything. Yet as he looked at her, half frozen in the night wind, his resolve shook. Behind him, the little girl came closer. She peeked around her father's leg, her wide eyes settling on the stranger. The alien woman saw her too and lowered her gaze in shame. She seemed ready to collapse, too weak even to argue. Elias spoke, his voice low and firm. "You cannot stay here." The words were hard, but even as he said them, a part of him knew he was speaking to convince himself more than her. The little girl tugged at his sleeve, her small voice broke the heavy silence. "Papa, she is hungry." Elias clenched his jaw. He wanted to protect his daughter, to shut the door and keep their world safe. But the child's innocent words cut deep. The alien widow had lowered herself to her knees now, her thin hands clutching the edge of the doorframe. Her breath came in shivers, visible in the cold night air. The fire crackled inside the house, warm and bright, while outside the wind tore at her rags and pushed against her weak body. One step away was comfort, bread, and life. One wrong choice could mean danger, fear, and regret. Elias felt the weight of the moment pressing down. The night seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what he would do. His daughter's small hand still clung to his sleeve, pulling him toward mercy. The widow's eyes lifted, glowing faintly with desperation, silently begging. The man's hand trembled on the door. His voice came out as a whisper, caught between fear and compassion. "If I open this door, everything may change." And in that instant, he knew that nothing in his life would remain the same after this night. The door was still open, only a crack, and the cold air poured into the small wooden house. Elias stood there, his hand tight on the frame, his mind heavy with doubt. The alien widow knelt on the threshold, her face pale and gaunt, her body shaking as if the wind itself wanted to carry her away. His daughter, little Anna, clung to his sleeve with wide, frightened eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the storm filled the silence. Then Anna tugged harder and whispered again, "Papa, she is hungry." Elias looked down at his daughter. She was too young to understand danger, too innocent to know why people whispered about aliens like this woman. To Anna, there was only a person in need. That was enough. The widow lifted her head weakly, her voice almost lost. In the wind. "Please, I will work, I will clean, anything for a crust of bread." Her eyes were large and sorrowful, glowing faintly in the dark. Elias felt his chest tighten. He wanted to push the door shut, to keep the world out. But before he could speak, Anna did something he never expected. She stepped forward, her small hand reaching toward the stranger. Her voice was soft but clear enough to strike like thunder. "You can marry my dad," she said. "Then you can stay and eat with us." The words fell into the night like stones dropped into still water. Elias froze, his breath caught in his throat. The alien widow's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. She seemed too stunned even to breathe. Elias turned sharply toward his daughter. "Anna," he whispered harshly, "you do not say such things." His heart pounded in his chest, shame and confusion twisting inside him. But the girl only looked up at him with honest eyes, not realizing the weight of what she had said. "She has no one," Anna continued softly. "Mama is gone and she is alone too. If she stays, we will not be alone anymore." The innocence of her reasoning struck Elias harder than any weapon. He stared at his daughter, then at the widow still kneeling in the doorway. The woman lowered. Her gaze, her face flushed with humiliation. She had not come here seeking marriage, only survival, yet the child's words had pierced straight through her heart. Her hands trembled as she pressed them together. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I never asked for such a thing. I only wanted bread. But your daughter's kindness is more than I deserve." Elias felt the ground shift beneath him. He had lived years behind walls of caution, keeping his life simple and guarded. Now, with a single sentence from his little girl, those walls trembled. He could feel the weight of choice pressing down on him once again. Inside the house, the fire snapped loudly, as if demanding an answer. The smell of warm bread drifted from the hearth, sharp against the icy air sneaking in through the open door. Behind him lay safety. Behind him was the world he knew. At the threshold knelt a stranger, a widow from another people, a burden he was not sure he could carry. Yet the look in his daughter's eyes, trusting, hopeful, told him that to refuse would wound her far more deeply than he could bear. The widow swayed weakly, almost collapsing. Elias caught her by the arm before she hit the ground. Her skin was colder than stone, her body light as if the wind had hollowed her out. He pulled her inside without thinking, his instincts stronger than his fears. "Sit by the fire," he said gruffly, his voice rough but not unkind. He guided her to the chair by the hearth. Anna rushed to fetch a blanket, draping it clumsily over the stranger's shoulders. The widow looked around the small home with wide, uncertain eyes as if she had stumbled into another world. The bread was taken from the hearth, steaming and golden. Elias cut a piece and set it in front of her. She hesitated, her hands trembling as though afraid it would be taken away. Then she ate, each bite slow, almost reverent, tears slipping down her cheeks as warmth returned to her body. Elias stood back, watching in silence. His heart was still unsettled, his mind filled with questions he could not yet answer. Who was she really? Why had she come here? Could he risk letting her stay? But Anna did not hesitate. She sat beside the widow, her little hand resting on the woman's arm. "Now you are safe," she said with a child's certainty. "We can be family." The widow closed her eyes, overwhelmed. No one had called her safe in years. No one had offered family. She bowed her head, her voice breaking with quiet words. "Thank you, little one. I owe you my life." Elias looked at the scene before him, his daughter smiling at a stranger, the widow trembling with gratitude, the fire burning brighter than before. He felt the first crack in the walls he had built, around his heart. The night outside still roared, but inside, something new had begun. The fire burned steady inside the small wooden house, its glow chasing away the icy fingers of the storm outside. The alien widow sat close to the flames, her thin hands wrapped around the blanket that Anna had draped over her shoulders. Her face was calmer now, though her eyes still carried a deep shadow that no warmth could fully erase. Elias sat across from her, arms folded, his gaze sharp and cautious. He had given her bread, he had allowed her to sit, but he had not given his trust. Anna, on the other hand, leaned comfortably against the woman's side, her little head resting as if she had known her for years. The contrast made Elias uneasy. His daughter's innocence was too quick, too open, and he knew the world was not as safe as her heart believed. For a while no one spoke. Only the crackle of the fire filled the room. Then Elias broke the silence. His voice was low, steady, carrying the weight of a man who needed answers. "Tell me who you are," he said. "Tell me why you came to my door." The widow lifted her head slowly. Her eyes reflected the flames, shimmering with sorrow. She clasped her hands together as if holding them tight would give her courage. "My name is Saraya," she began softly. Her voice was melodic, yet heavy, shaped by years of hardship. "I was once a wife, once part of a family, but that life ended when the war claimed my husband." Anna stirred, her small brow furrowing. Elias kept his gaze steady on Saraya, urging her silently to continue. "He was a soldier, a brave man. Of my kind?" Saraya said, her tone trembling as she spoke the memory. "He fought to protect our colony when the skies burned with ships. We thought he would return, but only his body came back. They buried him with honor, but they buried me with him in a different way." Her eyes lowered, her voice bitter. "Widows are not respected in my world. They are seen as cursed, empty, a reminder of loss. His family turned me away, his clan closed their doors, and the neighbors whispered behind my back. I became nothing more than a shadow walking among the living." Elias felt a flicker in his chest, a small sting of recognition. He too had known the weight of whispers after his wife passed. People treated him differently, pitied him, and then left him to stand alone. Still, he said nothing, letting her speak. "I wandered," Saraya continued, her words spilling slowly, as if each one carried a wound. "I traded the little I had for food, but it never lasted. Doors closed in my face. Stones were thrown when I begged too long. The world no longer had a place for me. I thought perhaps if I walked far enough I might find somewhere that did." Anna lifted her head, her child's voice soft with concern. "You had no one to help you?" Saraya's lips trembled in a faint smile, touched by the girl's innocence. "No one, little one. Only the stars above and the ground beneath. Each night I wondered if I would wake the next morning, and each morning I wondered if I should keep walking. When the cold grew too deep, when my legs could not carry me, I found myself here, at your door." Her words filled the room with a heavy silence. Elias's eyes narrowed slightly, studying her. He wanted to find deceit in her story, some hidden trick, but all he saw was exhaustion and truth. The way her voice cracked, the way her body shook when she spoke of shame. It was not the voice of a liar. Yet a part of him still resisted. "Why here?" he asked firmly. "Why not the town nearby? Why not others of your kind?" Saraya looked into his eyes then, and for the first time her sorrow turned sharp, like glass catching the light. "Because your kind, human, showed mercy, when mine showed none. Your armies brought destruction, but I have seen your people share bread with strangers. I prayed one might share it with me." Her words struck deeper than Elias expected. He shifted in his chair, unsettled by the rawness of her answer. Anna, however, looked at Soraya with shining eyes. "Papa," the girl said quietly. "She is telling the truth." Elias closed his eyes briefly. He wanted to protect Anna, to shield her from disappointment and danger. But in his heart, he knew the girl's instincts often saw clearer than his fears. Soraya bowed her head again, her voice fading into a whisper. "If you wish me gone, I will go when the storm passes. But if you allow me to stay, even for a short while, I will work. I will earn every bite I take. I do not ask for pity, only a chance to live." The fire flared with a sudden pop, sending sparks into the air as if marking the weight of her plea. Elias stared into the flames, his mind restless. He had taken her in for one night, nothing more. Yet already the story of her past, the burden she carried, had woven itself into the air of his home. Anna reached out and took Soraya's hand in her small fingers. "You can stay," she said firmly, with the certainty only a child could have. Soraya's eyes glistened, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She squeezed the girl's hand gently, her heart aching with gratitude. Elias said nothing, but deep within him a decision was forming, one he knew he could not avoid much longer. The widow's past had been laid bare, but her future was now tied to his choice. The storm passed by dawn, leaving the ground outside heavy with frost and silence. Smoke rose gently from the chimney of Elias's house, a small signal of life in the quiet land. Inside, the fire still burned, though its glow had softened. Anna slept curled beneath a blanket, her tiny breaths steady. Soraya sat near the fire, her eyes half closed, holding herself as though afraid she might wake and find the warmth gone. Elias stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the pale light creep over the fields. His thoughts weighed heavier than the frost. He had let the widow into his home, fed her, allowed her to rest. But what now? One night of mercy was easy. A lifetime of responsibility was something else. His gaze shifted to Soraya. She looked different. In the morning light, less like a stranger and more like someone worn down by years of struggle. Her hands, though fragile, showed the marks of hard work. Her face, though tired, carried a quiet strength. Yet Elias's heart refused to soften completely. He had a daughter to protect, and he knew too well that good intentions did not always shield a man from danger. He turned back to the window, his jaw tight. If word spread that an alien widow was living under his roof, questions would follow. Whispers in the town, stares from neighbors, perhaps even threats. People feared what they did not know. And some men, greedy and cruel, would use that fear as an excuse for violence. Behind him, Soraya's voice broke the silence. "You regret letting me in?" Her tone was soft, not accusing, only stating what she believed. Elias turned slowly, meeting her eyes. "I do not regret giving bread to someone starving," he said firmly, "but I do regret the danger it might bring." Soraya lowered her gaze, her fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. "I will not stay longer than I must. Your kindness is more than I deserve." Her words cut deeper than Elias expected. He clenched his fists, frustrated. Why did she speak? As if her life held no value? Why did his daughter cling to her so easily? Why did his own heart feel divided, torn between caution and compassion? Anna stirred, waking from her sleep. She rubbed her eyes and climbed from her blanket, stumbling toward Soraya with a sleepy smile. "Good morning," she said softly, placing her doll in Soraya's lap. "She can keep you company when I am not here." Soraya froze, staring at the simple toy in her hands. Her eyes shimmered, and she bent her head to kiss the doll's worn fabric. "Thank you, little one," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and joy. Elias watched them, his heart twisting. He had raised Anna to be kind, but her kindness now built chains around him. Every gesture she gave to the widow tied him closer to a choice he could not ignore. Later, as the day stretched on, Elias busied himself with chores outside. He chopped wood, repaired a broken fence, tended to the small animals they kept. But no matter how hard he worked, The questions would not leave his mind. Could he keep Soraya here? Could he risk his daughter's safety for the sake of compassion? And what of the child's words, "Marry my dad"? Did Soraya think of them too? As he swung the axe, he heard laughter. He stopped, startled by the sound. It had been so long since laughter filled his home. He leaned against the handle of the axe, listening. Anna's voice rang bright, and Soraya's voice, softer, joined it. The sound carried through the cold air like a promise of something he had not dared to dream of in years: family. Yet with the warmth came fear. Elias knew the world would not accept such a union of human and alien. Men in town already eyed him with suspicion, jealous of his land, bitter about his independence. If they learned of Soraya, they would not stay silent. When he returned inside, he found Anna teaching Soraya how to stitch a torn sleeve. The widow's hands shook, but she smiled as the child corrected her. The sight filled Elias with both tenderness and unease. That evening, after Anna had gone to bed, Elias sat across from Soraya. The firelight danced between them, shadows flickering, on the walls. He leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "You must understand," he said. "I cannot keep you here forever. People will talk. They will judge. Some may come with anger, and I cannot risk my daughter's safety." Soraya lifted her eyes, calm yet weary. "I understand," she said softly. "I never expected more. I only wished for one night of shelter, one meal to remind me I am still alive. If I must leave tomorrow, I will." Elias studied her face, searching for deceit, but found only honesty. His chest tightened. He wanted to believe that sending her away was the safest choice. Yet deep inside, another voice whispered that perhaps safety was not found in walls and distance, but in trust and unity. The fire popped, casting sparks upward. Elias rubbed his temples, weary. He did not answer her. His mind remained at war, caught between fear of the world outside and the fragile hope that something new was taking root inside his home. As the night deepened, Soraya wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her gaze lingering on the small room, the little girl's doll still in her lap. She whispered a prayer in her own language, words Elias could not understand, but the tone was clear. It was the sound of someone who had found a flicker of belonging and feared it might vanish with the dawn. And Elias, sitting in silence, knew that by tomorrow he would have to choose: send her back to the cold world that had rejected her, or take the risk of keeping her, no matter what storms it might bring. Days passed quietly after the storm. Soraya began helping around the small house, though her movements were careful, as if afraid she might break the fragile peace that had been given to her. She carried water, swept the floors, and even began tending the garden behind the house. Anna followed her everywhere, her little hands eager to help. To the child, Soraya was no longer a stranger. She was a companion, someone who listened to her stories and tucked her hair behind her ear with gentle care. Elias watched them closely. He said little, but he saw how quickly his daughter's heart had opened. At times he felt a strange warmth in his chest, a reminder of what family once felt like. Yet with that warmth came a shadow of worry. Peace like this never lasted. Not in a world where fear and suspicion ruled. It did not take long for the whispers to begin. One afternoon, as Elias walked to the nearby well, he noticed two men speaking in low voices. They glanced at him and fell silent when he passed. He felt their eyes linger, sharp and heavy as though cutting into his back. Later, in the small trading post, a woman muttered under her breath about aliens creeping where they do not belong. Elias pretended not to hear, but his fists tightened. When he returned home, Soraya noticed his silence. "Something troubles you," she said gently. Elias did not answer at once. He looked at her standing by the fire, her sleeves rolled up from washing clothes, Anna humming happily beside her. For a moment he wanted to keep the truth hidden, to shield them both, but the words pressed out anyway. "People know," he said, simply. "They are already talking." Soraya's face fell, though she did not look surprised. She lowered her eyes, her hands folding together. It was only a matter of time. she whispered. They do not forgive my kind easily. That night, Elias could not sleep. He sat at the table long after the fire had dimmed, his thoughts restless. He remembered the wars, the fear, the destruction left behind. He remembered the graves. Many in town had lost fathers and sons to battles against Soraya's people. To them, she would always be an enemy, no matter how broken or hungry she appeared now. The next morning, shadows deepened. A loud knock rattled the door. Elias opened it to find 3 men standing outside, their faces grim. The leader, a tall man with sharp eyes, spoke coldly. "We hear you have taken in one of them," he said. "Is it true?" Elias kept his voice steady. "She is no threat, she only needed food," the man sneered. "Today it is food, tomorrow it is betrayal. You cannot trust their kind. Send her away, or trouble will find you." Elias felt anger stir, but he held it back. "She has done nothing wrong," he said. "Nothing wrong," the man spat. "Her people burned our homes, killed our families. Do you forget so easily?" His eyes narrowed. "Do not test the patience of this town, Elias. We are watching." With that, the men turned and walked away, their boots crunching hard against the frosted ground. Elias stood at the door for a long moment, his jaw clenched. Inside, Soraya had heard enough. She stood near the fire, her face pale but calm. Anna clung to her side, sensing the tension. "They will not stop," Soraya said quietly. "I should leave before more danger comes." Elias shook his head. "You will not walk back into the cold. I will not allow it. But your daughter, she is safer here with honesty than alone with fear." Elias interrupted. His eyes burned with determination. Still, unease filled the air. Each passing day, the stares grew sharper when Elias went to town. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. Some children taunted Anna when she played near the fields, shouting cruel words about her alien mother. Elias's fists itched to silence them, but he knew striking back would only make things worse. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Elias returned home to find the gate to his small farm broken. The animals inside were restless, spooked. On the fence, carved with a knife, was a single word: traitor. Elias stood frozen, the word burning into his mind. He knew what it meant. The men had given their warning, and now they were acting on it. Inside the house, Soraya noticed his expression. She approached slowly, her voice steady, though her hands shook. "They will not stop, Elias. To them I am not a widow, not a woman, not even a person. I am only a wound they cannot forgive." Anna stepped forward, her small voice brave. "You are family," she said firmly. "They cannot take that away." The words pierced Elias's heart. He looked at his daughter, then at Soraya, and he felt the weight of the world pressing harder on his shoulders. He was no longer deciding only for himself. His choice would shape their future, for better or worse. The shadows had come knocking, and he knew they would come again. The word carved into the fence lingered in Elias's mind like a scar burned into wood. Traitor. It was more than a warning. It was a promise of what the town thought of him now. Each time he looked at it, he felt the walls of his world closing in. He had lived quietly for years, asking nothing from his neighbors, yet all it took was one act of mercy to turn them against him. Inside the house, the air carried a tension that even the fire could not warm. Soraya moved silently through the rooms, her head low, though her hands worked tirelessly. She cooked, mended clothes, fetched water, anything to repay the kindness she had been shown. But her eyes betrayed her fear. She knew she was a weight dragging the family toward danger. Anna, however, saw none of that. To her, Soraya was part of the home now. She laughed when Soraya told her gentle stories from faraway stars. She held Soraya's hand when they walked through the garden. Each night she whispered prayers that Soraya would never leave. To Anna, the question had already been answered. Family was not about blood, it was about love. But for Elias, the question remained, sharp as a blade, Could he defy the whole town? Could he risk his daughter's safety for a widow from another world? Or would sending Soraya away protect what little peace he had left? That night, as the wind rattled the shutters, Elias sat at the table, his head heavy in his hands. Soraya stood nearby, her voice calm but steady. "You should not suffer for me," she said. "I have brought danger to your door. If I leave, they may forget. Your daughter will be safe again." Elias lifted his head, his eyes blazing with conflict. "Safe? Without you, she will not understand why kindness was punished. Without you, she will learn that fear is stronger than compassion. That is not the lesson I want her to grow with." Soraya's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she saw the fire in his heart, the same fire that had led him to open the door that night. The choice came to a head sooner than Elias expected. 2 days later, as the sun dipped low, shouts echoed from the road. Elias stepped outside and saw torches bobbing in the distance. A group of men was approaching, their voices sharp with anger. His stomach tightened. The storm he feared had arrived. "Stay inside," he told Soraya firmly. He picked up the old iron tool by the door and stepped onto the frozen ground. The men stopped at the broken gate. Their leader, the same man who had warned him before, stepped forward. "Elias, we gave you time," he said coldly. "You chose wrong. That alien does not belong here. Hand her over or face the cost." Elias's grip tightened on the iron. "She has harmed no one," he answered. "She is under my roof. You will not take her." The men muttered angrily, shifting their torches. The leader sneered. "So you choose them over us? Over your own people?" Before Elias could speak, again a cry rang out. Anna had stepped onto the porch, clutching Soraya's hand. The sight froze the mob. A child, unafraid, standing beside the widow they despised. Anna's small voice cut through the night. "She is my family. If you take her, you take me too." Silence fell heavy. The torches flickered in the cold wind. Even hardened men could not meet the child's eyes. But the leader snarled, unwilling to back down. He stepped forward, raising his torch higher. And then, in a moment no one expected, Soraya moved. She stepped in front of Anna, her body shielding the child completely. Her voice rang out, strong and unshaken. "If you must harm someone, harm me. I will not let your anger touch this child." The words struck Elias like thunder. He saw then the truth. Soraya was not a burden, not a curse. She was a mother without children, a widow without a home. Yet still she would stand between danger and innocence. In that moment, Elias knew his choice was no longer about fear or reputation. It was about family. He raised the iron tool, his voice fierce. "She stays. Anyone who dares step past this gate will find me standing in their way." The mob wavered. They had come expecting weakness, but instead found a man and a widow united with a child at their side. Their torches flickered uncertainly. The leader cursed under his breath, but even he felt the shift. To attack now would be to strike a child, and none had the stomach for it. One by one, the men lowered their torches. Muttering bitterly, they turned back down the road, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. The leader lingered, glaring at Elias, before spitting into the dirt and following the others. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of the fire inside the house. Elias lowered the iron, his chest rising and falling with the weight of what had just passed. Soraya turned, her eyes shimmering with both fear and gratitude. Anna clung to her tightly, her small arms refusing to let go. Elias looked at them both, and for the first time since that fateful knock on his door, he spoke without hesitation. "You are part of this family now," he said firmly. "No one will change that." Soraya's eyes filled with tears. She bowed her head, her voice breaking with a whisper. "Thank you, Elias." In that moment, the choice was made. Not for the world outside, not for whispers or threats, but for the fire that burned inside their home. They were a family bound not by blood but by trust and sacrifice, and together, They would face whatever shadows came next. The night after the mob turned away was the longest Elias had known in years. He sat awake for hours, staring into the way. Fire. His mind replaying the scene at the gate. The anger in the men's eyes still burned in his memory, but so did the sight of Soraya standing in front of Anna, ready to take any blow meant for the child. That image had carved itself into his heart. When dawn broke, the house was quiet. Anna still slept peacefully, her doll clutched in her arms. Soraya sat by the window, her face pale with worry. She had not closed her eyes all night. The fear of what might come next still clung to her like a shadow. Elias walked over and stood beside her. For a moment neither spoke. Then he placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "They may come again," he said softly. "But if they do, they will find me waiting. You are not alone anymore." Soraya turned her head, her eyes shimmering. "Why would you risk everything for me? I bring you nothing but trouble." Elias shook his head. "You bring my daughter joy. You bring laughter back to this house. That is worth more than peace built on fear." Her lips trembled and she lowered her gaze. "No one has ever spoken of me like that since my husband died." Later that morning, the three of them shared bread at the table. The air was different, lighter though the threat outside still lingered. Anna chattered happily, telling stories as if nothing had happened the night before. She broke off a piece of bread and placed it in Soraya's hand. "Now you are part of us," she said brightly. "We eat together." Soraya smiled, though her eyes glistened. She touched the child's cheek with gentle fingers. "Yes, little one, together." In the days that followed, Elias noticed how the house began to feel alive in ways he had almost forgotten. Soraya sang softly while she worked, her voice carrying a haunting beauty that filled the rooms. Anna followed her with endless questions, and Soraya answered each with patience. At night the fire seemed warmer, the silence less heavy, but outside, whispers still spread. Elias could feel them like cold winds pressing at the walls. Some neighbors avoided him, others glared openly. Yet, strangely, he no longer carried the same fear. Each time he saw Anna laugh in Soraya's arms, each time he saw the widow smile with a hint of peace, he knew his choice was right. One evening, after chores were finished, Anna asked a question that made Elias pause. "Papa, if she is family now, can I call her mother?" The room fell silent. Soraya froze, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. Elias felt his throat tighten. The word carried weight, the kind of weight that could either heal or break. Soraya knelt beside Anna, her voice soft but steady. "If you wish to, you may, but only if your heart means it." Anna hugged her tightly, her small voice muffled against Soraya's shoulder. "I want to. You are mother now." Tears spilled down Soraya's cheeks. She held the girl close, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. For years she had been nameless, unwanted, cast aside. Now a child had given her the greatest gift, belonging. Elias watched the scene, his chest heavy with emotion. He had thought his heart had died with his wife. Yet here it was, beating strong again. He stepped forward and placed his hand gently on Soraya's arm. She looked up at him, eyes shining through tears. "You have a place here," he said firmly, "not as a guest, not as a burden, as family." Soraya's lips trembled into a smile. She bowed her head, whispering words in her language, a prayer of gratitude carried to the stars. From that day forward, life was not easy, but it was fuller. Elias faced the stairs in town with unflinching eyes. When people muttered, he stood, tall, no longer apologizing for his choice. Anna thrived, her laughter brighter than ever, and Soraya, though still carrying scars from her past, began to heal within the shelter of their home. Seasons changed. The frost melted into spring, and the fields bloomed with color. Together they planted seeds, built fences, and worked side by side. Each day the bond grew stronger, not of convenience, not of pity, but of true kinship. One evening, As the sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Elias, Saraya, and Anna sat on the porch. The land stretched wide before them, quiet and peaceful for once. Anna leaned against Saraya, her eyes heavy with sleep. "Do you think they will come again?" Saraya asked softly. Elias looked out at the horizon, his voice steady. "Perhaps, but if they do, we will face them together. That is what family does." Saraya nodded, her heart full. For the first time since the war stole her husband, she did not feel like a widow anymore. She felt like a mother again, like a woman with a place to belong. As the stars lit the night sky, Anna whispered drowsily, "This is home now." Elias smiled, his hand resting gently over Saraya's. "Yes," he said, "home." And in that simple word, the truth of their journey was sealed. A bond had been forged, not of fear or survival, but of love, trust, and the unyielding strength of humanity's heart.